with Whoopi, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Megan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Say, Joy, that's a very nice sweater you're wearing.
Well, thank you, Whoopi.
It looks
Who
really
designed
good.
it?
That looks like an ugly Christmas sweater by anyone we know. I love that you guys wear them. Thank you for doing
I don't
that.
think they're ugly, though, Whoopi.
I know.
Well, they're
They're
just
just festive.
they're odd, some of them, and I like that because I'm kind of odd. But I love that y'all do that. That you had last week, and I got to put you in one, and
Yes.
you. So they're fun.
They're
you
pretty.
know?
They are. They're not your traditional, like, ugly Christmas sweater.
No, Barbara
one
had
wants to
one.
wear.
Remember Barbara?
Barbara
Walters
had-
had the
yeah.
ugliest sweater, and she wore it constant every
Did she think it was ugly, though?
No, that's the tragedy of it. She thought it was good. She thought it was attractive.
It was a wild. I mean, it was like, oh, great sweater. But I think we have lots of things to make us go. But according to this morning's headlines, it's Mueller time. Any minute now, he's set to drop some new details about the Russian investigation. You know who tweeted that his former fixer Mike Cohen should have the book thrown at him. And prosecutors are expected to recommend jail time for his one-time national security advisor, Michael Flynn. So what do y'all think is going down?
No. I think what's going to be interesting is Mueller's been so tight-lipped about the investigation and the scope of the investigation. So this is the first time that we get a peek into the exact scope, how people are cooperating, what they told, federal investigators. And so I think that's going to be pretty interesting because all the judges prior to sentencing are asking for information. And so they have to provide that information today. So it will really be a peek, and we'll see how methodical he's being because he's getting all the lower level people, right? So, and that's how you do it. You get the lower level people, then you get the mid-level people, and you're not even talking to the targets. You're just investigating the targets.
Right.
And what's also interesting to me is, Roger Stone says, I'll never flip on Trump and I don't have anything to say. Yeah. And I think George Stephanopoulos asked him, have you been asked to cooperate with the government? And he said no. And I was thinking, you're the target. So I thought that was odd that he hasn't been even asked to talk.
But
to them.
So what do you make of that? He's the one they're after?
Yeah, because you're not talking. You're talking to the lower level people. You're building your case, and then the folks at the top, you're not necessarily
why
speaking to them.
Say, I'll never flip on. There's certain verbiage, sort of would freak my ears up.
Yeah.
Because if you say I'll never flip on Trump, it's like, well,
yeah.
What do you mean you'd never flip on? What would you flip on him about?
Yeah.
What are you talking
He said,
about?
I will never testify against Trump.
Well,
And
and
maybe they're hoping to say the same thing. Michael Cohen said he would never flip on Trump either, and he's singing like a canary right now.
Yeah.
Because the thought of being, in prison is really a horrible idea. Let's face it.
Prison's no fun.
Yeah, and they don't want to do it. And Manafort's old now. I mean, he's older than me. Almost. Is anyone older than me in this room? But I mean, he's going to spend the last few years of his life in prison, and then Cohen is young and he has kids, and no.
I don't know, these three guys, Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, I've said this before, these are not good guys. They've got a past that
But he
could
only
very
picks
well.
the best people.
Well, Michael Cohen, until now, he's weak and he's stupid, but he relied on him for his most precious dealings. If anyone can survive this, it's President Trump. I mean, time and time again, we have seen him go through moments. Access Hollywood video, I thought for sure that was going to take him down. Stormy Daniels, who knows where that ends, but as of right now, he actually has the upper hand. It sounds like Stormy's team may have to pay his lawyer
treason sits
$800,000.
with people. I don't think treason is going to sit well with America.
We've seen it already.
No, we haven't. We've heard people talk about it, but no one's been able to say, and here's where it is. And I think that's what people are waiting for. They're waiting for, here's the smoking, I don't want to say the word, but here's the,
We'll get a peek
the
into
smoking
that.
flute.
We'll get a little bit of a peek into.
Well, you're not allowed
what
to
if there
say
isn't
that
that?
anymore.
We'll get a peek today, I think.
But what
Maybe.
if there isn't that smoking, I'll say it, smoking gun at the end?
Yeah, well,
what
we're
if
not
there
gonna
isn't
see
that?
that.
We don't know, because there may not be a direct link between these guys that gets President Trump behind bars.
We're not
we
gonna
already
see that
know.
today.
But don't we
No,
all-
I'm just saying we don't know. It may never even end up there.
Don't we already know that he gave Michael Cohen permission to pay hush money to that McDonald woman and also Stormy Daniels? He actually was in that.
Which
that
is
whole,
arguably a campaign finance,
That's a campaign
violation.
finance
But
regulation.
I think that
that
people
he
want,
violated.
you know, that
Concrete.
I think they want
Yeah,
concrete.
and Cohen taped a lot of stuff. Let's not forget that he was very much the compulsive taper. So there's your smoking flute.
Yeah, you know, there's some speculation that one person who may not be impacted by the Mueller investigation is the guy in the White House. And this could be bad news for folks. What do you think?
Well, here's what I think. I was just going to say one thing about it. He is the only president who has his own TV channel in history. Nixon didn't have it, so he has Fox News, and Fox will just back him up because
I would
his...
be careful about that, though, because
Well, let me finish the thought.
Okay.
His failure as a president means their failure as a station. So they have everything invested in propping him up and backing his lies. So that is a very, very unusual position for somebody to be in.
did you watch the Chris Wallace interview with President Trump
Some
a
of
few weeks
it,
ago?
yeah.
Did you think that there were some hard-hitting questions there?
Yeah.
Because that was Fox News. I mean, there are a number of folks there that very much push back on him and are not in his camp, that are great journalists.
Brett Baer, Kennedy, Harris Faulkner, Shep Smith. I could go on and on and on. There are a lot of great people at Fox
There are.
News.
Yeah,
Mark
but there are
McCallum.
plenty who don't.
But
And
there's
the
a lot that
overall
are.
position, I think the Fox,
but you could talk about every
Fox
network.
base watches the ones that do not.
And I think
that
that's why they
back
get
him.
so much access to the president, because he knows that it's a friendly place.
Yeah.
But I think what's also interesting is that Trump is tweeting out all of this stuff, and obstruction of justice is tampering with a witness, and that's a federal crime. So when he's sort of issuing
walking
these
a very thin line
veiled
on those
threats,
tweets.
he's
Yeah.
giving Mueller even more ammunition, because again, it's a federal crime to say, if you don't need to testify, or you should testify, or that guy's really cool because he's not testifying. I haven't forgotten about my pardon power. All that kind of stuff is sort of dog whistling to these witnesses.
And it's on
really
there.
inappropriate.
You can't say that it's fake because, well, he says it anyway, but
It's almost
kind of there.
it's almost like because he says it out loud, people don't take it seriously. If they had uncovered this conversation about Helsinki, for example, when he took the word of Putin over his CIA, if they had uncovered that, it would be treasonous. But because he says it on TV, everybody's like, oh, whatever.
I think one of the biggest issues he could face is one of his kids getting in real trouble. And then that's the
Yeah.
question is, do you stay in office if Don Jr. is really charged with something? But what really
I
makes me
don't love
pause...
living in hypotheticals in life in general. Like, as a general rule, we're not there yet. We know that Michael Flynn has cooperated more than we thought.
Yeah.
That's what we know today.
Yeah.
Each day there's
Right.
a little bit of
Little bit
picking,
more.
a little bit more, but we shouldn't get out ahead over our skis about what's impeachable, what's not, when we don't know what we don't know. And I think it's dangerous, because I know that I've been promised many times before, including on this very show, that we had it, that we did have the smoking gun, and I will still stay gun on national television. And thank you very much.
I'm sorry, the reason I didn't say gun was because Steve Scalise was coming on, and I didn't want anybody to misunderstand the joke. That's why I didn't do it, just so we're all clear. Sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead,
if we're
babe.
not allowed to,
No,
we're not allowed.
you're allowed to.
No,
It was just,
honestly.
it was just me trying to,
Well,
be
yesterday,
respectful.
2 days ago, there was something brought up about guns that we said, oh, guns again. So, again, I don't know what the
Oh,
line
I
is
didn't know what
today.
happened, but I just know this was just me trying to be thoughtful. We'll
Oh,
be
yeah,
back
I'm
with
very excited he's coming on.
with more hot topics.
Later, the war at home. You won't believe how many times your kids will fight with you before they turn 18. How did the co-host handle it when the kid gloves come off?
We are really strong women.
People need to hear what women have to say, and that's us.
That's what makes the show so good.
We will back you up. We will stand with you.
Anybody who wants to make it to the next level in politics has to come on this show.
I feel like there's no better time to be on a show like this, to stand up for those things that you believe in.
It is up to all of us to continue the conversation.
See you on The View.
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 See you on The View. I always wanted to say that.
Police takes you inside the terrifying moment a gunman opened fire on him.
So, welcome back. The opening night of the Cher show on Broadway, the actor who plays Sonny Bono, Jared Spector, noticed that Kanye West was glowing blue in the audience because he seemed to be on his cell phone during the show. So Spector sent him a tweet. So cool that you're here at the Cher show. If you look up from your cell phone, you'll see we're doing a show up here. It's kind of a big deal for us, so thanks.
Wow.
Now, Kanye apologized for his lack of etiquette. And you know, it's a question I sometimes ask myself, because I try to make it a policy that, no, if you're working on stage, if I'm performing for you, don't do that, because you see me, see me.
I will say I was at the opening, and it was, and I wasn't very far from Kim and Kanye, and it was distracting. You could see it. I mean, everybody was staring at them anyway, and then you could see it during the performance. People's phones were going off, and Cher, when she first came into the audience, I mean, everyone went crazy, but they didn't experience Cher because everybody had their phones out, and I just started thinking, like, we're here to see a show. Why are you not living in the moment? I mean, you know this, I like experiences. I'm a person of experience, so sometimes I never have pictures of the things that I go to because I just want to go to them and experience it. And that wasn't happening last night.
How old-fashioned of you.
I know, right? My family's always like, you didn't take a picture?
But people are on stage. They're working their butts off.
And they work hard.
It surprises me when the artists are the ones on their phones, because they know what it's like to be on that stage, like Kanye West. They know how annoying it is when you work so hard to get to that point, and people are taking photos and spending that time posting on Instagram for people to see them, rather than enjoying their moment.
Jack White doesn't allow cell phones at his concerts anymore. Like, if you want to come in, you can't do it, because same thing. He says on stage, I want you to be in the moment.
I like that.
Was he taking a picture, or was he texting Trump? That's what I want to know.
No, they're not friends anymore, George.
He actually said he was taking notes because it was such a spectacle. I will say,
that's such a weird lie. I call BS on that.
I wasn't sure. You know, Madonna and Lin-Manuel
during the
I don't believe that.
Lin-Manuel, is that the whole name? Yeah. Madonna was in his audience at Hamilton. She was doing that. Whatever, taking a picture or whatever, and then she went backstage and he wouldn't take a picture with her. He's chastised her.
I like that.
It's a little rude, and what was so rude about it for this particular show is, you know, Bob Mackie, who did all of her costumes. The costumes and the construction was just fantastic, and you really needed to see it to see the spectacle. And with the phones on, they missed it.
It's very simple.
Costume changes.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many.
It's very simple. Stay home if you want to watch television.
Yeah.
If you don't, the theater is meant to be live. The people on stage, they're there. You can almost touch them.
Yeah.
If you want to watch it here, then don't go, because it really does. It is distracting, because on stage we can see you.
We can see.
And I say this all the time in my shows, like, you know I can see you, right?
Yeah.
So put the phone down.
Why don't they confiscate them at the door? They could. Some places do that.
Some places do. Yes, they're allowed to do that. Yeah.
Because they did announce no phones and no picture taking.
But you know, you can. There's
it's
also
not the same thing. But I throw parties where you can have cell phones in it, like where I make you jog it, and then especially in Vegas.
You know,
remember what happened to Prince Harry?
Oh,
yes.
What happened to Prince Harry?
Those photos of him in the hotel room.
Photographed him doing, you know, and you know, and everybody wants to be on top and do the gotcha.
But photos.
Come into the theater, please. Just be respectful of the artists, because people are working really hard, and if you're distracting them because you're doing this, you could cause somebody to fall off a stage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really important that you pay attention.
And they worked so hard. It was such a good show.
Katharine Hepburn's story. She stopped the show. She just stopped the show. It wasn't a phone. It was something else. They were fixing the little candy wrap.
Oh, I hate that.
And she just said,
Stop it.
Why
I
do
can
they give
see
you the candy if you can't open it?
Open it before we come on stage. We'll be right back.
Next, Congressman Steve Scalise shares the tiny miracles that saved him from getting killed by a gunman who opened fire, and how President Trump helped motivate him to get back in the game.
Steve Scalise came terrifyingly close to death when a gunman opened fire on him and other congressmen. Thankfully, he escaped with his life, and he's just written an aptly titled new memoir, Back in the Game. Please welcome, it's my honor, Congressman Steve Scalise to the meeting. Thank you so much for coming on, Congressman. It's such an honor to have you here. You know,
what an honor to be here, and thank y'all for having me, and love the reindeer sweater.
Thank you.
She can
Merry
give you one if you like.
Yes, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So we want to talk about your book, but obviously we have to bring up America's Mourning the Loss of former President George H.W. Bush. What do you think of his legacy, especially in regards to today's Republicans?
Well, you know, President George H.W. Bush was such a warm and gentle man. And yesterday I was at the ceremony at the Capitol. It was just a wonderful celebration of his life. You had a lot of really touching speeches, and, you know, our Speaker, Majority Leader in the Senate, and the Vice President gave some wonderful remarks, and the crowd was tearing up. I teared up a few times, and you could see President George W. Bush and the rest of the family tearing up as well, just celebrating a great life of a great man. And just look what he did in New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans, represent the city of New Orleans, and after Hurricane Katrina, he and President Clinton, and Bill Clinton had defeated him in the election, and yet they came together and put together the Bush Clinton Foundation, raised over $90 million to help rebuild schools and churches, and just that's the kind of person that he was, and it's great to celebrate a wonderful life. And I know, Megan, you have a similar celebration, tough time, but what a wonderful legacy you have to remember as well.
Yes, thank you.
And speaking of life, it's a miracle that you're sitting with us today, because a little over a year ago, you almost lost your life. You were at a congressional baseball practice. I remember because I was covering the breaking news at the moment, and no one knew really what was happening at that time. You thought that it was a tractor that was backfiring. At what moment did you realize what had happened and that you were shot?
You know, the first shot, you're on a baseball field at 6:30 in the morning. You're not thinking that there's a shot being fired. The second shot, I knew it was gunfire, and by the third shot, I was hit and went down. My legs gave out. The bullet shattered my femur and broke my hip, and so it did a lot of internal damage. I didn't realize how much damage it did, but I went down, and I just started crawling away. And I could tell it was coming from third base. I'm on second base, so I didn't see the shooter, but I could just hear the gunfire, and I'm crawling away from it, and then my arms gave out after about 20 feet. And at that point, I just started to pray. I said, God, I put it in God's hands, and I prayed. The first thing that came to mind, I've got a daughter. She was 10 years old at the time. And I said, God, please don't let Madison have to walk down the aisle alone. It's just the first memory that came to me. And boy, I just felt this incredible calm come over me that God, I put it in his hands, and he did take care of me. And there were so many miracles on that field. I document a lot of those in the book. Things that you just, maybe the first or second thing you go, that's a coincidence. And after the third and fourth and fifth thing, Trent Kelly, a congressman from Mississippi, is playing third base, maybe 30 feet from the shooter. And he shoots right at Trent's head. And the bullet hits a link in the chain link fence and just veers enough to where it went. He said he felt it go right by his head, but it was directed for him. And then he looks over and he sees the shooter and he takes off. And he served in Iraq, so he knew immediately it was a gun.
The gentleman who was also the doctor in...
Brad Wenstrup, congressman from Ohio, colleague of mine. Typically, he leaves at around 7 o'clock in the morning. He had an 8 o'clock meeting at his office, and then the meeting got canceled on his way to practice. So his scheduler said, okay, you don't have the 8 o'clock meeting. So he decides to stay late. And he goes to the batting cage, and when the shooting starts, Brad was a combat surgeon in Iraq. And so he's watching me, and he's seeing me, he's looking for movement. He sees my leg moving, and he just wants to see if I'm still alive. And as soon as the shooter went down, and my guy, Capitol Police, David Bailey and Crystal Griner, Capitol Police officers that were there, are in a shootout with the shooter. Both of them got hit during the shootout and kept going at it. And as soon as the shooter went down, Brad comes over to me. he sees that there's an entry wound, but there's no exit wound.
Right.
And he saw a similar case in combat, and the man died. The soldier died. So he knew what was going on inside of me, and he knew he needed to stop the bleeding. And he put on a tourniquet. My trauma surgeon told me if that tourniquet wasn't applied just perfectly, like Brad put it on, I would have never even made it to the hospital. So many miracles like that.
And there were, recovery was long, and there were, I imagine, a lot of dark days. What was the low point for you in all this?
You know, the lowest point, and I had a lot of setbacks, and, you know, infections would set in, and I'd go back to surgery. I had 9 surgeries, and Dr. Sava and the whole team, I talk about them in the book and how the wonderful things that they did to keep me alive. But I had a lot of nerve damage in my left leg, and when one of my doctors, Dr. Asaf, came to me and said, you know, they did a lot of nerve tests, and they said, you know, we don't think the nerves in your foot are going to come back on the left foot. So I may never be able to run again. I love playing sports. But you know what? I knew at the time, okay, I've got my life, I've got my family. The things that I love, I can still do. And if I can't run again, I'll come up with other hobbies. But you know, it helps you focus on what's important in life. And so sure, we have setbacks. I had setbacks. I talk about that in the book. But I also talk about the things that gave me strength, the people who gave me strength. Prayers from strangers, friends, from, you know, Bono calling, Prime Minister Netanyahu from Israel calling me from the hospital to talk about his brother who died in the raid in Entebbe, and talking about that experience. I mean, just wonderful people that lift you up. And, you know, there was one act of evil, but there were so many acts of kindness and miracles and you know, and heroes. And we talk about that in the book too. So anybody who's got something they're dealing with that's tough in their life, you can get through it. And rely on the people that are there. You know, not just your friends that come, but it's amazing how strangers just pop up along the way too and give you strength.
So I can't imagine what you've gone through is like. But I have to say I'm a bit surprised that after all you went through that you don't seem to have an idea that there may be some more gun control that we need to work on with stuff like this, with people who maybe shouldn't have access to them, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm surprised that you don't feel that there's any more that we can do with gun control.
You know, right after I came back, and, you know, 3.5 months later, I came back to Congress and got to go back to work again. And, you know, people that would ask me, you know, so are your views different on gun control or even on other issues? And, you know, I've got deep-rooted conservative beliefs, but they're rooted in what the fundamental foundation of this country is based on. I mean, the Constitution was written initially, they didn't have a protection for guns because our founders just thought it was an assumed right. Later, they added it in the Bill of Rights as the Second Amendment, but they felt very strongly every American has the right to defend themselves. And if you look, there are bad people out there, you know, whether they use guns or knives or bombs. There are a lot of laws on the books. You know, if somebody goes and uses a gun to commit a crime, they've broken a series of laws to get there. And so let's enforce the laws better. And look, we found a lot of mental health problems. And there's usually a common thread in a lot of these shooters that they're mental health issues. We weren't closing a lot of those loopholes. We just passed some new laws, and they were very bipartisan, so they didn't get a lot of attention. But laws that help close a lot of those loopholes and coordinate a lot of the mental health problems in this country, so that if somebody does have serious mental illness, they're going to be taken care of in a better way. And obviously the laws that protect them along the way, too.
So I have a kind of a silly question that has to go with this also. So we talk about the founding fathers from time to time because we have all these discussions about guns and gun laws, and I'm a gun owner. What do you think they were talking about? What kind of guns? Because it says if you're part of the militia, you have every right to you know, carry arms. So what kind of guns do you think they were talking about? Do you think they were ever considering?
They had muskets back then, and that might have been considered a, you know, a powerful weapon. Right. You know, today we laugh about some of that. But I mean, look, our founding fathers, what they really talked about was that people had a right to defend themselves. And they felt very strongly. It wasn't
they did
just
say militia.
But it wasn't just in the Supreme Court, by the way, answered this question a few years ago. There was a question of whether or not the militia only meant you have to be in the military to be able to own a gun, or can you own it individually? And the it was a 5-4 decision, which is concerning. I mean, it should have been a 9-0 decision. But the Supreme Court said very clearly, you can own a gun, not just as a member of the military, but also individually to protect yourself. And so that is what the true meaning of the Second Amendment is. And again, go back and read what our founders talked about before they wrote the Constitution. This was a fundamental belief.
Okay. You know, we may never agree on.
But it's important that, we have this debate,
Yes.
and, you could talk about the muskets and what they did. They didn't have, airplanes and things that you can do to deliver bombs that allow us to deliver weapons in different ways.
Congressman Scalise, you had 9 surgeries and then you returned and had a standing ovation. And I wanted to know what that was like, finally coming back at the State of the Union to this kind of applause. I was so happy to see you up and walking and speaking and just, back doing what you do best. What was that moment like?
It was one of the most special moments of my life. I mean, obviously, my wedding to Jennifer, my birth of my kids, Madison and Harrison, but to be able to come back. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come back to work. A lot of people were wondering about that. And so to be able to get back into the House chamber and see my friends, Republican and Democrat, people I hadn't seen in months, some people that had come to visit me, and to see that warm reception, it meant so much to be able to do that again when it was a question whether or not I was going to be able to. And so, that kind of reaction shows you. And I mean, Cedric Richmond, my colleague from New Orleans, who's probably as liberal as you can be. I'm a conservative Republican. He was sitting right behind me. He was the first person to come to the hospital right after the shooting. The Democrats had their practice going on that morning too, and he showed up in his uniform. So just, again, it shows you there are real friendships you can form. Republican and Democrat, treat people with respect.
We're happy you're here.
Congressman Scalise, it's such an honor to have you. Thank
great
you
to be
so
here.
much.
Thank
It's
you.
really a privilege. I'm so glad you're doing well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Members of the audience are getting a copy of his book, Back in the Game. We'll be right back.
The savings are still gorgeous at viewyourdeal.com. We partnered with vendors for at least half off the hottest holiday beauty products. Paracone MD, Beauty Lighting by Glamcore, Primal Elements shampoo and conditioner bars, Michael Todd beauty devices, Glove Treat warm paraffin treatment, Root Cover Up by True Hair, and Tan Luxe self tanners. Get to viewyourdeal.com now.
We just clapped for like 3 minutes.
We just had an epiphany here. We had just this amazing 1.25 minute applause thing, and we didn't know why. We didn't know why people were clapping. Also, I'm not wearing my sweater because in the break I gave it to Congressman Scalise. He said he liked it.
He said he was going to wear it to the Capitol.
Yeah, and you know what? He said he liked it. And people who like me, even if I don't agree with them with stuff, I could like them too.
Of course.
And that's important. That's important for all of us.
We had a great conversation backstage because his family is Sicilian and mine is Calabrese.
Right.
We bonded at the Italian level.
Yes. They were talking all about the
That's a
food.
thick
Yeah.
And that's
Very
a
thick
great
bond.
thing. So don't forget that. Even in the heat of whatever arguments you're having with people, don't forget that it's okay to disagree. That was the fundamental right of being an American.
And share your clothes.
And share your clothes with people who like it. Now here's something that it's a different kind of groove. It's a heads up for new parents out there. A recent poll found that you will fight with your kids about 5 times a week before they turn 18. I don't know why this is a shock to people, but apparently it is. I mean, and I don't know what they mean by fight. Does that mean disagreement? Does that mean, oh my God, you need to put on more clothes than you have on right now? Is that what they mean?
What about when you say, I hate you? I mean, I love that one when kids go, I hate you.
Oh, I'm bad. I say, I hate you too. My God. And then they look and it's like, what? It's like, well, didn't you just say
I was
that?
surprised at those numbers because I don't remember fighting with my parents, and my children, I wasn't allowed to, and my children aren't either, but they certainly are allowed to give me their point of view, they have discussions, but I don't understand, make your case to me. Don't, I hate you or anything like that. No disrespect.
My grandson will negotiate. I like a negotiating
Yeah, I
kid.
don't mind that.
Like if I do that, can I go to bed later, or can you buy me this if I do that?
Yeah, make your case.
There's a lot of that going on.
But not the fighting. I find that disrespectful, actually.
Yeah.
We weren't weren't allowed to either. We had a timeout chair, but I did it anyway.
Tell them what you told us.
I'm one of 7 kids, so you're going to get some kids that fight back, and now I have a great relationship with them. But I was a terrible child. I ran away from home so many times. I told you guys in the morning meeting. There was one time.
Tell it.
Okay, quickly. I packed my suitcase, a pair of underwear, and a hat because apparently I needed that. Ran down our front. We had a
How old were you?
hill. I was probably 8, and I saw this boy who was 2 years ahead of me who I had the biggest crush on. I was so embarrassed because I had my suitcase. Fell down, dropped the suitcase, out rolls my underwear. I go back into the house bawling. I run up to my bed, and the boy brings it up to the front door, rings it, and my mom answers it. He said, I think Abby left behind something.
See?
To this day, I've seen him.
That's what you
later.
get for fighting with your parents.
So my mom's like, it's karma. That's what you deserve.
Do you see him now? What does he say about it?
Actually, he asked me out on a date years later, and it didn't work out. But
Oh, he liked you.
See, there was no discussion in my house. My mother said, that's what I said, and that's what she said. That was it. But, negotiate on if you can. We'll be right back.
This week, The View is given the gift of Red Hot Topics.
Being here with you girls is enough of a gift.
Plus, Howie Mandel, Kerry Washington, and Ruben and Clay light things up with holiday cheer. This week on The View.
It is Cancer Screen Week, so right now we are finding out how early detection can mean the difference between life and death. With help from our sponsor, Genentech, and the Chief Cancer Control Officer for the American Cancer Society, Dr. Richard Wender. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And man, does this affect every single person in this room and everyone that's watching right now? I just had a big chunk taken out of my chest, a mole that was leading to melanoma. Tell us about Screen Week and what everyone needs to know about it.
Well, last year, Genentech, the American Cancer Society, Stand Up to Cancer, and Rally Health came together for a very critical reason. So many people think there's nothing they can do to reduce their risk of dying of cancer, and it's not true. Every one of us can reduce the risk of dying of lung cancer, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, cervical cancer, or prostate cancer by following the American Cancer Society guideline and getting tested or screened, regardless of family history, regardless of how you're feeling.
Doctor, we're going to focus on screening and prevention for 3 types of cancer today, and those types are lung, breast, and cervical. Can we start with lung? What do we need to know?
Well, the first thing that people need to understand is that lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related death in both men and women. It kills more women than breast cancer does, and so many people don't realize that. Although smoking is far and away the biggest risk, 30,000 people every year get lung cancer who never smoked.
Yeah.
But now, for the first time, just a few years ago, we can screen people who have a history of smoking, who are at high risk, for lung cancer, and we can reduce the chances they'll die of this disease by about 20%. And it's being underutilized. Not enough current and ex-smokers, it's not just for current smokers, are getting screened, so this is the time to take action.
My mom's sister passed away of lung cancer in her mid-30s.
Wow.
When she found out, she lived for 3 weeks. What you're saying is so real.
Yeah.
I also have breast cancer. I have every type of cancer in my family, as many people do, but breast cancer is a big one, and it can affect everybody.
It does. And it's interesting you mentioned family history, because that really is the first thing that all of us have to do. We have to know our family history. So many people do not. They've not asked around to really figure out what people have. So if you have a family history of breast cancer at an early age, you might need to start earlier than 40. But for everybody else, at age 40, that's when that discussion has to begin. Everybody should have the chance and may opt to start screening with mammography, and that's the key, is mammograms every year starting at 40. But by 45, if you have not started, every woman needs to begin with an annual
Whether it's in
mammogram.
your family or not.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, and can you please tell us about prevention for cervical cancer?
Well, I think every woman knows, because they've been living with the pap smear for a lot of years, that every woman should be screened regularly with the pap smear. And we've done an amazing job. Cervix cancer used to be #1 cause of cancer death in women, and now it's way down the list. Every 3 years till 30, and then with the new way we screen, it's every 5 years, and every woman can do that. That's not that tough to do. Here's the amazing news. With the combination of HPV vaccination and regular screening, we can, and I believe we will, make cervix cancer the first cancer eliminated in the United States.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. It's really incredible.
something to me quickly before we go backstage. You said don't get your whole body screened. Do it individually.
Absolutely. You know, we're hearing more about this, and people say, oh, I'm just going to look for everything. I'm going to get a total body screen. It's not a good idea. Number one, we have no evidence it's actually going to reduce your risk of dying of these various cancers, and that's critical to make a screening recommendation. Number two, we find lots of things that lead to lots of other tests which actually don't work. And that's why we recommend that everybody go to cancerscreenweek.org and check out what we're doing. And talk to your personal physician about the screening right for you.
Doctor, thank you so much. This is so important.
Yeah.
All right.
Really
Our thanks to
appreciate it.
Dr. Wender and our sponsor, of course, Genentech. Please consult your doctor before making any medical decisions, and we will be right back.
With Whoopi, Abby Huntsman, Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Meghan McCain. Now, let's get things started.
Say, Joy, that's a very nice sweater you're wearing.
Well, thank you, Whoopi.
It looks
Who
really
designed
good.
it?
That looks like an ugly Christmas sweater by anyone we know. I love that you guys wear them. Thank you for
I
doing
don't
that.
think they're ugly, though, Whoopi.
I know.
Well, they're
They're
just
festive.
they're odd, some of them, and I like that because I'm kind of odd. But I love that y'all do that. That you had last week, and I got to put you in one, and you. So they're fun.
They're
you
pretty.
know?
They are. They're not your traditional, like, ugly Christmas sweater.
No, Barbara
one
had
wants to
one.
wear.
Remember Barbara?
Barbara
Walters had the ugliest sweater, and she wore it constantly.
Did she think it was ugly, though?
No, that's the tragedy of it. She thought it was good. She thought it was attractive.
It was a wild. I mean, it was like, oh, great sweater. But I think we have lots of things to make us go. But according to this morning's headlines, it's Mueller time. Any minute now, he's set to drop some new details about the Russian investigation. You know who tweeted that his former fixer Mike Cohen should have the book thrown at him. And prosecutors are expected to recommend jail time for his one-time national security advisor, Michael Flynn. So what do y'all think is going down?
No. I think what's going to be interesting is Mueller's been so tight-lipped about the investigation and the scope of the investigation. So this is the first time that we get a peek into the exact scope, how people are cooperating, what they told, federal investigators. And so I think that's going to be pretty interesting because all the judges prior to sentencing are asking for information, and so they have to provide that information today. So it will really be a peek, and we'll see how methodical he's being because he's getting all the lower level people, right? So, and that's how you do it. You get the lower level people, then you get the mid-level people, and you're not even talking to the targets. You're just investigating the targets.
Right.
And what's also interesting to me is, Roger Stone says, I'll never flip on Trump and I don't have anything to say. Yeah. And I think George Stephanopoulos asked him, have you been asked to cooperate with the government? And he said no. And I was thinking, you're the target. So I thought that was odd that he hasn't been even asked to talk.
But
to them.
So what do you make of that? He's the one they're after?
Yeah, because you're not talking. You're talking to the lower level people. You're building your case, and then the folks at the top, you're not necessarily
why
speaking to them.
Say, I'll never flip on. There's certain verbiage, sort of would freak my ears up.
Yeah.
Because if you say I'll never flip on Trump, it's like, well,
yeah.
What do you mean you'd never flip on? What would you flip on him about? What are you talking
He said,
about?
I will never testify against Trump.
Well, and maybe they're hoping say the same thing. Michael Cohen said he would never flip on Trump either, and he's singing like a canary right now.
Yeah.
Because the thought of being, in prison is, is really a horrible idea. Let's face
Prison's
it.
no fun.
Yeah, and they don't want to do it. And, Manafort's old now. I mean, he's older than me. Almost. Is anyone older than me in this room? But I mean, he's going to spend the last few years of his life in prison, and then Cohen is young and he has kids, and no.
I don't know, these three guys, Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, I've said this before, these are not good guys. They've got a past that
But he
could
only
very
picks
well.
the best people.
Well, Michael Cohen, until now he's weak and he's stupid, but he relied on him for his most precious dealings. If anyone can survive this, it's President Trump. I mean, time and time again, we have seen him go through moments. Access Hollywood video, I thought for sure that was going to take him down. Stormy Daniels, who knows where that ends, but as of right now, he actually has the upper hand. It sounds like Stormy's team may have to pay his lawyer
treason sits
$800,000.
with people. I don't think treason is going to sit well with
Well,
the
we've
American
seen it already.
No, we haven't. We've heard people talk about it, but no one's been able to say, and here's where it is. And I think that's what people are waiting for. They're waiting for, here's the smoking, I don't want to say the word, but here's
We'll get a peek
the
into
smoking
that.
flute.
We'll get a little bit of a peek into.
We're not allowed
what
to
if there
say
isn't
that
that?
anymore.
We'll get a peek today, I think.
But what
Maybe.
if there isn't that smoking, I'll say it, smoking gun at the end?
Yeah, well,
what
we're
if
not
there
gonna
isn't
see
that?
that.
We don't know, because there may not be a direct link between these guys that gets President Trump behind bars.
We're not
we
going to
already
see that
know.
today.
But don't we
No, I'm just saying we don't know. It may never even end up there.
Don't we already know that he gave Michael Cohen permission to pay hush money to that McDonald woman and also Stormy Daniels? He actually was in that.
Which
that
is
whole,
arguably a campaign finance,
That's a campaign
violation.
finance
But
regulation.
I think that people
he
want,
violated.
that concrete.
Concrete.
I think they want concrete.
Yeah, and Cohen taped a lot of stuff. Let's not forget that he was very much the compulsive taper. So there's your smoking flute.
Yeah, there's some speculation that one person who may not be impacted by the Mueller investigation